All right, good morning, everybody. Today is November 30th, so we are back into e-learning, and we are going to look at just basically a review from last week, as well as, last week and the last 2 weeks, as well as start something a little bit new here. So not a whole lot to do today, but there will be an exit ticket at the end. So number one, just take a look at the top here. We are going to review a little bit from this past week. We talked previously about trapezoids, including isosceles trapezoids. We talked previously about kites, and we talked about parallelograms. So here are all their properties listed out for you, as well as some diagrams. So definitely pay attention to this. This is very critical that you know this when we finish out the semester with the test. You're going to need to know all these properties, okay? So just remember, trapezoids, okay? If they're isosceles, that means the sides are the same. Remember, their angles are supplementary. These angles are congruent in isosceles. Also, we have the mid-segment. So that formula, we didn't really write it down, but the mid-segment formula is base 1 plus base 2 over 2. Okay, so if this is base 1 and this is base 2, you add them up. Same thing. Add them up, divide by 2, right? So pretty simple from that standpoint. All right, so let's look at some examples. Find the missing side angles and side lengths of the following figures. All right, so let's assume, I'm just going to give you a number here. Let's assume that TU is 8, okay, and this one's 10. Okay, so what would the mid-segment be if that's the case? Add them together. So 8 plus 10 divided by 2 is 18 divided by 2, which is 9. So our mid-segment would be 9. Okay, what about angles? Well, remember that in the same side of a trapezoid, they add up to 180. So if this one is 80 degrees, what's 180 minus 80? It's 100 degrees. So that would make this 100 degrees. Okay, and then remember that same side, okay, we're going to assume that this is isosceles. I meant to put that in the notes. We can say it is isosceles because look at the red mark. Okay, that means they're congruent, okay? So, if this is 100, then this also has to be 100 degrees, and then this one has to be 80 degrees. So those are the properties of the isosceles trapezoid. So, angles on the base are the same, okay? These ones are supplementary. Leg angles are supplementary, okay? They add up to 180, all right? Kite. Okay, with a kite, we know that these two are congruent, so this has got to be 6 meters. This is 90 degrees, this is 90, 90, 90. Okay, so if this is 30 degrees, remember that this diagonal bisects it, so this must also be 30. Okay, well now I have a 30 and a 90, so what goes over here? 30 and 90 is 120, and it's got to equal 180, so I'm missing this 60 degree angle. Okay, that means that's got to be 60 degrees. Okay, so I have a 30, 60, 90, 30, 60, 90, okay? This is 90. Ooh, this says it's 90 degrees. So if it cuts it in half, that means this is now 45. Perfect. So this is a 45, 45, 90. Okay. So now, if we know that, we can do side lengths as well. 45, 45, 90. Right, and we could continue to solve that. We could use trig for this angle if we wanted to. Okay, but we're not going to do that right now. But you could say that since this is 45, 45, 90, remember 45, 45, 90 has x, x, and x radical 2. So for this one, we just have to say 6 equals x radical 2, divide by radical 2. Okay, so you'd have 6 over radical 2, and then you'd have to multiply both by radical 2. So this would be 6 radical 2 over 2, which is 3 radical 2. So this would be 3 radical 2, 3 radical 2, and this would also be 3 radical 2, right? So you could really go about solving that. I won't go into too much more detail, but you could use trig like SOHCAHTOA, TOA to figure out what these other side lengths would be as well. Okay, find the measure of angle S. Angle S is down here. Well, since this is a parallelogram, okay, so these are parallel and these are parallel. Okay, we know that in a parallelogram, the consecutive angles are supplementary. So 9x minus 8 plus 5x plus 20 equals 180. Okay, 9 and 5x gives me 14x. Negative 8 and 20 gives me a positive 12. Subtract 12. 14x equals 168. Divide by 14. Divide by 14. X is maybe 12. Something tells me it's 12. Let me check my calculator. Yep. Cool. So x is 12, but it doesn't want to know that. It wants to know what's the measure of angle S. Okay, so 9 times 12 minus 8. 9 times 12, of course, is 108. So this would be 108 minus 8, which is 100 degrees. Okay, which means this one has to be 80. This one has to be 100. This one has to be 80. Okay, so that's a quick review of parallelograms, kites, trapezoids that we did from last week. Now, this week, let's talk about rectangles, rhombuses, and squares. So, number one, these are special parallelograms because they are all a parallelogram, but they have more specific properties. I bet you didn't know that about rectangles. All right, now rectangles, I drew the picture here, so if you need to, go ahead and pause the video now. Okay, and you can see that a definition of a rectangle is a parallelogram, right? So these are parallel sides with 4 right angles, 90, 90, 90, 90. Okay, so what are the properties? Diagonals are congruent. Okay, so in a rectangle, these diagonals are congruent to that one. Also, it's got 90 degrees. We also know that a rectangle has congruent sides, but not all 4 congruent, just opposite pairs. Okay, how about a rhombus? A rhombus, okay, go ahead and pause the video now if you want. Okay, a rhombus has a parallelogram with 4 congruent sides. The diagonals are perpendicular. Okay, so diagonals here are perpendicular. Remember that the word perpendicular means 90 degrees. They form a 90-degree angle. So this, okay, which means all of these are 90 degrees. All right, so that's pretty cool about a rhombus. Something to remember. On the inside of it, the diagonals make a 90-degree angle. Also, the diagonals bisect the opposite angle. So very much like a kite, okay, it splits these angles in half. Splits it in half, splits it in half, splits it in half. Okay? So that's a rhombus. Okay, here's a square. A square is a parallelogram with 4 congruent sides and 4 right angles. Okay, so all 4 sides are congruent in a square. We already know that. And also the diagonals are congruent and also 90 degrees. So if you look closely, you could argue that a square is the same as a rectangle and a rhombus put together. Look, 90-degree angles, diagonals are congruent. All 4 sides the same. Center is 90 degrees. Look, all 4 sides the same. Center is 90 degrees. Diagonals are congruent. So a square is, you could almost say, like the love child of a rectangle and a rhombus. They both give you the square. Okay? So all the properties of a square can be found when you put together those properties of a rectangle and a rhombus. All right, so let's look at some examples here. For each parallelogram, choose the best name and then find the measure of the numbered angles. All right, so this one's got 4 congruent sides. This is 54 degrees up here, and if it were a square, this would be 90, right? And so that would make it half, which is 45 and 45. That is not the case because that does not add up to 90. So this is not a square, but rather this is a rhombus. Which means, I don't know what this is about, I apologize. Which means, okay, all 4 sides are the same and that these angles split. Right, so this is also 54. This is also 54. This is also 54. Okay, now remember that this is a triangle, so even if you don't remember the properties, a triangle adds up to 180 degrees. So what's 180 minus 54 plus 54 is 108. Well, that gives you the 2, 7, 10. So this is 72 degrees for angle 4, which means that 1, since it's a rhombus, is the same, so it's also 72 degrees. Okay? Not bad, right? 54, 54, 54, 54, 72, 72. All right, next one. Next one's got 90-degree angles. Okay, and it doesn't say anything about the side lengths, so we know that this is only a rectangle. Okay, in a rectangle, these are vertical angles, so this is also 106. Okay, and now in a rectangle, these go into a straight line, so 3 and 4 have to equal 180 degrees. So if 3 is 106, what's 4? 4 would be 74 degrees. 74, 74. Okay, and since it's a rectangle, these split, so that means these two have to be the same. Okay, so 108 or 180 minus 74, we already know, is 106. Okay, so what's 106 divided by 2? That would be 53. So these are 53. But this one has to be a 90-degree angle because it's a rectangle. So 90 minus 53 gives you 7, 8, and 10 gives you 37 degrees. Okay, so that's how you find the angles for that one. All right, and then let's do one more here. So you got a, let's see, looks like another rhombus. Okay, all the sides are the same. In a rhombus, this has to be the same, 59, 59. And then in a rhombus, we know that the center adds up to 90. So 2 and 3 are 90 degrees. Okay, so pretty simple there for you. We just wanted to go through some of the angles, mention some of the properties, so make sure to know the properties of all of them. They're listed out here for you today, so you do not have to write them in, but just know those, and you have an exit ticket here at the bottom. So if you have any questions, let me know, and I will see you guys in class.